Your Honor, Ethan Caldwell said, not even trying to hide the grin. She can have it. The courtroom lights were too bright for a room that felt that cold. White walls, gray carpet, a flag in the corner that looked like it had watched too many people lose, the kind of quiet that wasn't peace, just a crowd holding its breath, so it didn't have to feel sorry for anyone out loud. Harper Lane stood beside her attorney, hands folded the way you fold something fragile to keep it from breaking in public. Her fingernails were clean, short. Flour used to live under them. Now there was only the faint pink of skin that had learned to scrub away evidence. On the table between them sat a cardboard box, not a nice one, not even a sturdy one. An old, soft-edged thing with one corner crushed in like it had been kicked around a storage room and forgotten. The tape across the top had turned the color of old bone. A smudge of salt stained the side, as if the sea air had claimed it. Ethan nodded at it as though he'd placed a crown on her head. "There," he repeated, louder, so the back row could enjoy it too. "Compensation." A ripple of laughter moved through the spectators, small and quick, like someone cracking a window in winter just to remind you there's ice outside. Across the aisle, Sienna Hart sat with her legs crossed and her mouth arranged into sympathy. The kind of sympathy that only exists when it's being watched. Her hair was glossy, her blazer tailored, her perfume expensive enough to leave a shadow. She watched Harper the way people watch a street performer, curious, entertained, never threatened. Harper felt the heat climb her neck. Not from tears, from the precise, practiced cruelty of being turned into a punchline. And then, like the air itself shifted, Judge Rowan Pierce leaned forward. He didn't look at Ethan first. He looked at the box. His eyes moved over the yellowed tape, the crushed corner, the faded label that had once said holiday decorations in a careful hand. Then he looked at Margaret Caldwell, seated behind Ethan, posture straight, face composed like a locked door. "Mrs. Caldwell," the judge said, voice calm but edged with something sharper, "is that truly what you intend to give her?" Margaret didn't flinch. She didn't smile. She only met Harper's eyes for half a second. And in that half second, Harper saw something she couldn't name yet. Not pity, not kindness, something closer to permission. Ethan chuckled. "It's generous, Your Honor. She loves simple things." Harper's lawyer, Amelia Cross, didn't react. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She only placed her palm lightly near Harper's elbow, steadying, grounding. Judge Pierce's gaze returned to Harper. "Ms. Lane, do you understand what you're agreeing to?" Harper opened her mouth. No sound came out. "Because what do you say when the room is laughing and you're trying not to collapse?" She nodded. A tiny movement, barely there. The judge's pen scratched across paper. "Very well." A gavel didn't slam. It wasn't that dramatic. Just a stamp, a signature, and a quiet sentence that made the world tilt. "Proceed." Harper lifted the box when it was handed to her. It was lighter than she expected, almost insulting in its weightlessness. Ethan looked satisfied. Sienna looked amused. Margaret looked finished. Harper walked out holding the box like it was shame made physical. And that's where most stories would end. The woman leaves with nothing. The man wins. The crowd forgets. But this story didn't end there. Because the next morning, before Harper could even decide whether to open the box or throw it into the ocean, Amelia Cross pulled up outside Harper's small rented apartment in Graybridge. The rain tasted like salt. The sky hung low, as if the sea was exhaling. Amelia didn't ask how Harper slept. She didn't offer a pep talk. She just said, "Bring the box." They drove past the harbor, past cranes and container stacks, past the shiny billboard that said Caldwell Redevelopment. A new Graybridge is coming. Then Amelia parked in front of a brick building with a modest sign, Graybridge Registry of Deeds. Inside, the air smelled like paper and old ink, like history filed into drawers. Amelia led Harper to a counter, set down a clipboard, and slid a form toward her. At the top it read, "Deed Recording Request." Harper stared at the lines, the boxes, the blank spaces waiting for names. Amelia's voice lowered. "Listen to me," she said. What happened yesterday was theater. This is real. Harper's hand hovered above the pen. I don't understand, she whispered. Amelia's eyes didn't soften, but they steadied. You will, she said. And when you do, you're going to realize that box wasn't trash. Amelia nodded toward the form. Fill it out, exactly as I tell you. Harper's breath caught, because she didn't know it yet, but she was about to sign her name into a different life. And to understand why, we have to go back. Not to the courtroom, not even to the marriage. Back to a Saturday morning when Harper still believed love was enough. Back to Graybridge before the sea air tasted like betrayal. Because this story doesn't start here. Before Harper Lane ever wore a dress that cost more than her first car, she wore an apron dusted with flour. She lived in a small house outside town, the kind with peeling paint and a porch that creaked like it had opinions. Her mother, Lillian, was the kind of woman who did not complain. She simply adjusted. When the hot water heater broke, Lillian learned how to boil water on the stove. When the car's transmission started slipping, Lillian learned which hills to avoid. Harper learned early that survival wasn't dramatic. It was small things, quiet things. A jar of change in the kitchen, a second job taken without announcement, a smile offered even when it hurt. On weekends, Harper sold pastries at the Graybridge Farmers Market. Brown butter cookies, cinnamon rolls, lemon bars that made people close their eyes when they tasted them. Her booth was always the same, simple wooden table, white cloth, handwritten signs. She didn't do it because she dreamed of being famous. She did it because her mother liked to see people happy for a moment, and because Harper liked the way baking made sense. You put in the work, you follow the steps, you wait, and something good comes out. The day Ethan Caldwell noticed her, Harper's hands were sticky with honey glaze. He didn't arrive like a prince. He arrived like a man who expected space to move for him. Dark coat, clean shoes that didn't belong on wet pavement, a watch that caught the weak winter sun like a wink. He stepped through the market like he knew everyone would make room, even if they didn't know his name. But in Graybridge, people knew the Caldwells. They were the harbor, the warehouses, the cranes that lifted shipping containers like toys, the redevelopment plans that promised glass and money, and new restaurants where old diners used to be. Ethan stopped at Harper's booth and looked at her pastries like they were a novelty. "These are homemade?" he asked. Harper wiped her hands on her apron. "Yes." He pointed at a cinnamon roll. "I'll take one." She placed it in a paper bag, tied the twine, and handed it over. Their fingers brushed. Ethan paused, as if surprised by the warmth of that moment. He took a bite, and something in his expression changed, not softened exactly, more like intrigued. "This," he said slowly, "is better than the stuff they serve at the Harbor Club." Harper laughed, small and embarrassed. "Well, maybe the Harbor Club should hire me." Ethan's eyes held hers a beat longer than necessary. "Maybe," he said, "I should." He came back the next weekend, and the next. Sometimes he'd buy pastries. Sometimes he'd just stand there while Harper worked, asking questions in a voice that made her feel like her life, her small, ordinary life, was suddenly worth studying. "Where did you learn to bake? How long have you lived here? Do you ever want to leave?" Harper answered honestly because she didn't know how to be anything else, and Ethan listened like he was collecting her. The first time he invited her to dinner, it wasn't at a fancy place. It was at a quiet restaurant by the water, the kind with candles and linen napkins and a view of the harbor lights floating like golden beads on black glass. Harper showed up in her nicest dress. It was still simple, still her. Ethan looked her over and smiled. "You clean up well," he said, like a compliment and a reminder at the same time. Harper told herself not to overthink it. He asked about her mother. He offered to help with repairs around her house. He said things like, "You deserve more than this town can give you." When he held her hand, it felt like a promise. And Harper, who had spent her whole life building goodness out of scraps, believed him. The proposal came fast. Ethan took her to a cliff overlooking the sea, the wind cutting sharp and clean. He got down on one knee like he'd practiced it. "You're different," he told her. "You're real. You make me want to be better." Harper's eyes burned. Nobody had ever said that to her. Nobody had ever looked at her like she was the answer to something. So she said yes. When she told her mother, Lillian hugged her tight. "I just want you safe," her mother whispered. Harper heard it as blessing. She didn't hear the fear underneath. The first time Harper walked into the Caldwell house, she felt it immediately. The cold. Not temperature, something else. The house sat on a rise above the harbor. Old money pretending it didn't care about trends. Dark wood, heavy curtains, a silence that felt trained. Margaret Caldwell met Harper in the foyer. She was elegant in a way that didn't ask for attention. Pearl earrings, simple dress, hair pinned back with precise restraint. Her face had the stillness of a portrait. "Harper," she said, voice measured. No warmth, no hostility, just assessment. "It's lovely to meet you," Harper said, trying to sound confident. Margaret's eyes flicked over her dress, her hands, her shoes. Then Margaret extended her hand. Harper shook it. Margaret's grip was firm. "Welcome," Margaret said, and Harper realized the word didn't mean what it usually meant. That first dinner, Ethan played the charming son. He poured wine, he told stories, he made Harper laugh. Margaret watched. When Harper spoke, Margaret listened. Not like a friend, like someone taking notes. After dessert, while Ethan was in another room, Margaret walked Harper down a hallway lined with framed photographs. Ethan as a boy on a sailboat. Ethan as a teenager holding a trophy. Ethan shaking hands with men in suits. A life built to be displayed. They stopped at a door Margaret opened with a key. Inside was a storage room. Neat shelves, labeled boxes, and in the center, on a sturdy table, sat a cardboard box. Old, soft-edged, one corner crushed. Margaret placed her hand on it. "Paper," she said, almost to herself, "outlives people." Harper frowned slightly. "What is that?" Margaret's mouth curved, not quite a smile. "Things that matter," she said. "Things that don't need to be pretty." Harper nodded, not understanding. Margaret looked at her then, really looked. "You bake," she said. Harper blinked. "Yes, that's respectable," Margaret said, as if choosing the word carefully. "You're used to work." "Yes," Harper said again. Margaret's gaze held, then she turned away. "Ethan has always been used to being served," she said. "I hope you know the difference." Harper's chest tightened. But Ethan came back, warm and smiling, and Harper told herself Margaret was just protective. She told herself love could thaw anything. She told herself she was lucky. And for a while, it almost felt true. Harper moved into the Caldwell house. She learned where everything belonged. She learned which cabinets were for guests and which were for staff. She learned that Margaret preferred silence in the mornings and order always. Harper tried to fit herself into the life like dough into a pan. She smoothed, she adjusted, she rose where she was told. Ethan liked her like that. At first. He liked the way she looked at him like he was extraordinary. He liked the way she laughed at his stories. He liked the way she made the house smell like cinnamon, briefly masking the cold wood and old money. And Harper liked being chosen. For the first time, she felt seen. She didn't notice that Ethan's attention was a tide, beautiful when it came in, devastating when it pulled back. Not yet. It didn't break all at once. It broke like paper. Quiet. Repeated. Invisible at first. It began with jokes. Ethan started teasing Harper about her small-town habits. The way she said supper instead of dinner. The way she saved glass jars, just in case. The way she wore sweaters until the elbows thinned. Harper laughed with him because she thought that's what love did. It made you safe enough to laugh at yourself. But then the jokes started happening in front of other people. At a charity event, Harper reached for a tray to help a server who looked overwhelmed. Ethan caught her wrist gently and smiled at the guests. "Sorry," he said, "she still thinks she works here." People laughed. Harper's cheeks burned. She told herself it was harmless. Later that night, when she mentioned it softly, carefully, Ethan kissed her forehead like a father soothing a child. "You're too sensitive," he said. "I was complimenting you. It's cute." Cute. The word landed wrong. But Harper swallowed it, because she didn't want to be the kind of wife who made problems out of nothing, and because, somehow, Ethan always made her feel like she was the one who didn't understand. Then came the money. At first, Ethan said he wanted to take care of everything. He moved Harper's savings into a joint account. He handled the bills. He told her not to worry. "It's easier this way," he said. "You're not used to managing this kind of life." Harper didn't like the way it sounded, but she also didn't know the rules of this new world, so she let him. When she asked about reopening her baking business, Ethan smiled indulgently. "Why?" he asked. "You don't need to work. I give you everything." It sounded like love. It wasn't. It was ownership. Harper's mother Lillian visited sometimes. She'd bring jars of homemade jam and stand in the Caldwell kitchen looking slightly out of place, like a wildflower planted in a vase. Ethan was polite. Margaret was colder. One afternoon, Lillian watched Harper wipe down the counters after lunch, even though there were staff. "You okay, honey?" Lillian asked quietly. Harper forced a smile. "Of course." Lillian's eyes lingered on Harper's wrist. There was a faint bruise there, not from violence, from being grabbed too tightly in a moment of impatience. Lillian's jaw tightened, but she didn't say anything. She just squeezed Harper's hand before she left. When Harper tried to talk to Margaret, carefully, respectfully, about feeling isolated, Margaret listened without interruption. Then she said, "Marriage is not a place to seek comfort. It is a place to build endurance." Harper blinked. "But shouldn't it be?" Margaret's gaze cut her off. "You chose," Margaret said. "Now you learn." And Harper went quiet again. The first time Harper suspected Ethan was cheating, it was a scent. Not perfume on his collar, he was too careful for that. A scent on his coat that wasn't his cologne. Something sweet, sharp, expensive. The kind of scent that announced itself. Harper noticed it because she spent her life paying attention to small things. She said nothing at first. She watched. Ethan started traveling more. "Business," he said. "Development meetings." He took phone calls in the hallway, voice low. He turned his screen away when he texted. Harper tried not to become the kind of woman who checked pockets and searched phones. But one evening, Ethan left his laptop open on the kitchen counter. A message flashed on the screen. "Sienna, last night wasn't enough." Harper's vision narrowed. Her hands went cold. When Ethan walked in, Harper tried to keep her voice steady. "Who's Sienna?" she asked. Ethan's face didn't change. He glanced at the screen, then at Harper, as if bored by her timing. "A consultant," he said. "She's helping with the waterfront project." Harper swallowed. "Why is she saying—" Ethan sighed, heavy and annoyed. "Harper," he said, like he was educating her. "You don't understand how people talk in business. It's casual, it's modern. Not everything is a romance novel." Harper's throat tightened. "It sounded," she started. Ethan stepped closer. His voice dropped. "You're making yourself small," he said. "You're embarrassing yourself." Harper flinched, not physically, internally. Because the worst part wasn't that he denied it. The worst part was that he made her feel ashamed for asking. He kissed her cheek and walked away like the conversation was done. And Harper stood there, staring at the laptop, wondering if she had imagined everything. That's what gaslighting does. It doesn't just make you doubt your partner, it makes you doubt your own senses. Then came the papers. Ethan started bringing documents home. "Just sign," he said casually. "It's for the company." Harper hesitated. "Should I read them?" Ethan laughed softly. "You wouldn't understand them." He said it like a joke, but his eyes were serious. Harper read anyway, at least the first page. It was dense and confusing. Legal language, corporate terms. Her heart beat faster. "I don't feel comfortable signing something I don't understand," she said. Ethan's smile faded. The air changed. He leaned in, close enough that she could smell the coffee on his breath. "You're my wife," he said quietly. "Do you trust me or not?" Harper's chest hurt. Trust. That word was a trap. If she said no, she was disloyal. If she said yes, she was handing him the keys. She signed. A small, careful signature, like she was apologizing with ink. Later, Harper would remember the exact sound of the pen scraping paper. Later, she would wish she'd thrown the papers into the sink and turned on the water. But that night, she went to bed and told herself she was protecting the marriage. Margaret, meanwhile, said nothing, but Harper began noticing Margaret's eyes on her at strange moments. When Ethan spoke sharply, when Harper flinched, when Harper's voice went quiet. One night, Harper found Margaret in the storage room again. The cardboard box was there, unchanged, like a sleeping animal. Margaret was sorting files into labeled folders. Harper hovered in the doorway. Do you need help?" Margaret didn't look up. "No." Harper stepped closer anyway, drawn by something she didn't understand. "What is all this?" she asked softly. Margaret's hands paused. "Land," Margaret said. "Deeds, easements, leases." Harper frowned. "Why keep them in a box?" Margaret finally looked up. "Because people only respect what sparkles," she said. "They forget paper is the true weapon." Harper swallowed. Margaret's gaze held Harper's for a beat longer than comfortable. Then Margaret turned back to her work and said something Harper wouldn't understand until much later. "Never let anyone convince you you are lucky to be tolerated." Harper walked away confused, but something inside her stirred. Not anger, not yet, just awareness. The next time Harper saw Sienna Hart, it wasn't through a screen, it was in person. At a gala held at the Harbor Club, Ethan insisted Harper come. "You need to show face," he said. Harper wore a navy dress and a smile that felt borrowed. She stood beside Ethan while he shook hands, while he laughed, while he performed. And then she saw her, Sienna Hart, tall, confident, unbothered by the weight of the room. She moved like someone who believed she belonged anywhere she stood. Sienna approached with a glass of champagne. "Ethan," she said, voice smooth. Then she turned to Harper. "And you must be Harper." Harper's stomach tightened. Sienna extended her hand. Her nails were perfect. Her ring was new. Harper took her hand. Sienna's grip was light, almost dismissive. "So nice," Sienna said, smiling, "to finally meet the woman who makes Ethan so grounded." Grounded? Harper didn't know what to say. Ethan laughed. "You should see her cinnamon rolls," Ethan said, and the way he said it made Harper feel like a joke again. Sienna's eyes flicked over Harper, quick as a blade. "How charming," she said. Then she turned back to Ethan. "You're late," she murmured, like it was a private reminder. Ethan's face tightened for half a second. Harper saw it, saw the connection, the familiarity, the ownership. And suddenly the room felt too bright, too loud. Harper excused herself to the restroom. She stood in front of the mirror, gripping the sink, breathing through the tightness in her chest. Her reflection looked like a woman dressed up as herself. When she returned, Ethan was gone. Sienna was gone too. Harper searched the room. People smiled at her politely, pityingly, like they knew. Later that night, Ethan came home smelling like Sienna's perfume. Harper didn't ask this time. She didn't accuse. She simply lay awake, listening to the sound of his breathing, and realized something that cracked quietly in her chest. He wasn't going to stop, and she wasn't going to be saved. Not by love, not by patience, not by shrinking. The next morning, Harper called her mother. Lillian answered on the second ring. "Honey?" she said immediately, like she'd been waiting. Harper tried to speak. Her voice broke. "I think," Harper whispered, "I need help." Lillian didn't say, "I told you so." She didn't sigh. She just said, "Okay, I'm coming." Harper stared out at the harbor through the Caldwell house window, watching the cranes move in the distance like metal skeletons. She realized the truth, sharp and simple. Graybridge was being rebuilt, and so was she. But not yet. Not until she learned how to stop being afraid of what she might lose. Because the thing she had already lost, quietly, slowly, was herself. If you've never been trapped in a life that looks beautiful from the outside, you might think leaving is easy. You might think you wake up, pack a suitcase, and walk out with your head high. But leaving is rarely a door. It's a hallway, a long one, and every step feels like you're betraying something you once believed in. Harper tried to be strategic. She started baking again, quietly, in the Caldwell kitchen when no one was around. Not because she wanted to sell, Ethan would have mocked that, but because the rhythm of it steadied her, measuring, mixing, waiting. In a world where Ethan changed the rules daily, recipes stayed honest. One morning, Margaret walked into the kitchen while Harper was kneading dough. Harper froze, expecting criticism, but Margaret said nothing for a moment. She watched Harper's hands, strong, efficient, a kind of intelligence that didn't need words. "You're wasting flour," Margaret finally said. Harper's heart sank. "I'm sorry." Margaret cut her off with a small gesture. "Not because you're careless," Margaret said, "because you're baking for ghosts." Harper blinked. Margaret's eyes were calm, unreadable. "If you want to build something," Margaret said quietly, "build it where it can feed you." Then she turned and walked out, leaving Harper standing there with her hands in dough, confused and unsettled. Meanwhile, Ethan escalated. He stopped pretending. He started bringing Sienna into his world openly, as if daring Harper to react. He'd take calls at the dinner table. He'd text while Harper spoke. He'd come home late and not even bother with excuses. One night, Ethan tossed an envelope onto the counter. "What's this?" Harper asked. "Invitations," Ethan said, shrugging. "Company event, waterfront investors. You're coming." Harper's throat tightened. "I don't think—" Ethan's eyes flashed. "You don't think what?" he asked. "You don't think you can handle it?" Harper took a breath. "I don't want to be humiliated." Ethan laughed, short and sharp. "Humiliated?" he repeated. "Harper, no one is humiliating you. You humiliate yourself by acting like you don't belong." Harper's hands curled into fists. "I don't belong," she said softly. And for the first time, she didn't mean it as self-pity. She meant it as a fact. Ethan stared at her. Then his expression shifted, calculated. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Let me make this simple," he said. "If you want to stay in this house, you'll do what I tell you." Harper's stomach dropped. "Or what?" she whispered. Ethan smiled like a man who enjoyed the question. "Or you can go back to your little market booth," he said. "Back to counting pennies with your mother, and I'll make sure you leave with nothing." Harper's chest tightened, because he said it like he could, because he said it like he'd already planned it. The company event was held in a newly renovated warehouse by the harbor. Brick walls, string lights, catered food arranged like art. Caldwell redevelopment banners hung everywhere, promising revitalization. Harper walked in beside Ethan, her back straight, her smile polite. She told herself she would not cry. She told herself she would not break. Then she saw Sienna. Sienna stood near the center of the room, laughing with a group of investors. Ethan's hand tightened on Harper's back, steering her forward like a display piece. "Harper," Ethan said loudly, "come meet the team." Sienna turned. Her eyes lit up, not with surprise, but with something like satisfaction. "Oh," Sienna said, smiling. "Harper, you made it." Harper offered a thin smile. "Of course." Sienna's gaze slid over Harper's dress. "That color is brave." Ethan chuckled. Harper held her glass so tightly her fingers ached. They moved through the event like that, Ethan shining, Sienna orbiting him, Harper trailing behind like the reminder of a life Ethan was already discarding. At one point, Ethan stepped away with Sienna toward a quieter corner. Harper watched them talk, their bodies angled toward each other, their faces close. She felt something in her chest turn to stone. A man approached Harper with a friendly smile. "You're Ethan's wife," he said. Harper nodded. The man leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "He's lucky," the man said, hesitating. "You seem genuine." Harper almost laughed at the irony. "Thank you," she said. The man glanced toward Ethan and Sienna. His smile faded a little. "You deserve," he said, then stopped himself. "Never mind." He walked away. And Harper stood alone in a room full of people, feeling more invisible than she'd ever felt in her life. That night, Harper didn't wait for Ethan to come home. She went to the small bedroom that had once been their guest room, her unofficial refuge, and started packing a bag. Not everything, just essentials. Clothes, a few personal items, her mother's old recipe notebook. She hesitated over the notebook, running her fingers over the worn cover. Then she heard footsteps. Ethan appeared in the doorway. He looked annoyed, not concerned. "What are you doing?" he asked. Harper didn't turn fully toward him. "Leaving," she said. Ethan laughed. "Don't be dramatic." Harper's hands shook as she folded a sweater. "I'm not," she said quietly. "I'm done." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "You think you can just walk out?" he asked. Harper swallowed. "Yes." Ethan stepped closer. His voice lowered. "You have no money," he said. "No claim, no leverage. You'll embarrass yourself in court, and then you'll crawl back." Harper turned to face him. Her heart pounded. For the first time, she saw Ethan not as the man she loved, but as a man who wanted to win. And suddenly, the fear shifted. Because fear is powerful, until it's been used too many times. Harper's voice came out steadier than she expected. "Then I won't crawl," she said. Ethan stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. He scoffed. "You're not built for this," he said. "You're soft." Harper's eyes burned, but her chin lifted. "I was built," she said softly, "by surviving." Ethan's mouth tightened. He stepped back, as if suddenly bored. "Fine," he said. "Go. But don't come begging when you realize how expensive freedom is." Harper left that night, not with fireworks, not with a slam of the door, just with a suitcase and a notebook and the quiet understanding that she was stepping into uncertainty. Her mother's house felt smaller than Harper remembered, but it felt warm. Lillian hugged Harper like she was holding her together. "I'm sorry," Harper whispered into her mother's shoulder. Lillian pulled back and cupped Harper's face. "Don't apologize," Lillian said. "Just don't go back." The next day, Harper met Amelia Cross. Amelia's office was small, organized, efficient, like its owner. Amelia didn't offer tea, she offered truth. "You signed papers," Amelia said, scanning Harper's story like a document. "Do you remember what they were?" "No," Harper admitted. Amelia's eyes sharpened. "Then we'll find out." Harper hesitated. "Do I even have a chance?" Amelia set down her pen. "You have a chance," Amelia said, "but you're going to stop thinking like someone who is grateful for scraps." Harper swallowed. Amelia continued. "Divorce is not just about love ending, it's about power changing hands, and your husband believes you have none." Harper's hands clenched in her lap. Amelia leaned forward slightly. "We're going to prove him wrong," Amelia said. The process began. Financial disclosures, court filings, emails. Ethan's lawyers moved fast, aggressive, like they wanted to drown Harper before she could breathe. They offered a settlement that felt like an insult, a small payout, silence clauses, and a demand that Harper sign away any future claims. Ethan called Harper once, just once. His voice was smooth, almost kind. "Take it," he said. "It's the best you'll get. Don't ruin yourself trying to fight a war you can't win." Harper's throat tightened. "I'm not fighting for money," she said. Ethan chuckled. "Then what are you fighting for?" Harper's voice softened, but it didn't weaken. "My name," she said. "My life." Ethan's voice cooled. "You don't get both," he said. "In my world, you pick one." Harper hung up. The first court date arrived like a storm. Harper walked into the courthouse in a simple coat, her hair pulled back, her hands cold. Ethan arrived in a tailored suit, confident, surrounded by lawyers. Sienna appeared beside him, as if she belonged there. Harper's stomach tightened. Amelia leaned close. "Don't look at them," she whispered. "Look forward." Inside the courtroom, Ethan's team spoke with polished arrogance. They described Harper as unstable, emotional, unsuitable for Caldwell life. They described Ethan as generous. Then Margaret Caldwell entered. The room changed. Margaret didn't need to demand attention. She simply existed, and people moved around her as if she was gravity. She took her seat behind Ethan, face unreadable. Ethan looked pleased, as if his mother's presence was a guarantee of victory. Harper's breath caught, because if Margaret sided with Ethan, Harper truly would be alone. The judge, Rowan Pierce, began the proceedings, and then came the settlement proposal. Ethan's lawyer slid documents forward with a smile. "We believe this is fair," the lawyer said. "Ms. Lane will receive a personal item of significance, as agreed." Harper frowned. A clerk approached Harper and placed something on the table. The cardboard box. Old, crushed corner, yellowed tape. Harper stared at it, confused. Ethan laughed out loud. "Come on," he said, voice carrying. Tell them you're happy with it." Sienna's lips curved. Harper's cheeks burned so hot it felt like fire under her skin. Margaret's voice cut in, calm and sharp. "That is what she will receive," Margaret said. "One box, that is all." The room went silent. Harper turned toward Margaret, stunned. Margaret's eyes were fixed on the judge, not on Harper. No flicker of apology, no softness, just finality. Ethan leaned back, satisfied. And Harper realized with a sick twist that this was a performance designed to crush her. Amelia's face remained still, but Harper felt her attorney's fingers briefly press Harper's wrist beneath the table. A signal. Hold. Judge Pierce looked at the box, then at Harper. "Ms. Lane," he asked, "do you understand what you're agreeing to?" Harper's throat tightened. She should say no. She should fight, but something, instinct, exhaustion, the weight of every gaze, made her nod. Ethan smiled like a man watching a door lock. Judge Pierce made notes. Margaret didn't look at Harper once. The hearing ended. Harper left holding the box like it was shame made physical. Ethan's laughter followed her down the hallway, echoing off courthouse walls. And Harper told herself the truth that tasted like salt. This is what they think of me. This is what they believe I'm worth. A single old box. Harper carried it to her mother's car. Lillian stared at it, confused. "What is that?" Harper shook her head. "I don't know." Her hands trembled as she set it in the back seat. Amelia walked out behind them, calm as ever. She didn't speak until they reached the parking lot. Then Amelia said very quietly, "Don't open it tonight." Harper blinked. "Why?" Amelia's eyes flicked to the courthouse doors, where Ethan and Sienna were still talking, still laughing. "Because," Amelia said, "I want you to open it when you're ready to see what they never bothered to imagine." Harper's breath caught. Amelia placed a hand on the car door. "Go home," she said. "Sleep. Tomorrow morning I'm picking you up." Harper frowned. "For what?" Amelia's mouth curved just slightly, almost a smile. "For a form," she said. And Harper didn't understand. Not yet. But that night, she sat in her childhood bedroom with the cardboard box on the floor. It smelled like dust and salt and old paper. She stared at it like it might bite, and she did not open it. Because hope is terrifying when you've been trained to accept humiliation. Harper lay awake listening to the wind, and somewhere in the Caldwell house, Margaret Caldwell likely lay awake too, listening to the same wind, the same sea, the same truth. Because whatever game Margaret was playing, it wasn't a game Ethan understood. Morning came gray and wet, the sky hanging low like a ceiling you could touch. Amelia picked Harper up at 8 sharp. No small talk, no comforting lies, just motion. They drove through Graybridge while the harbor cranes moved in the distance like slow, indifferent beasts. Harper held the box in her lap. It felt lighter than it should, and that made her angrier somehow. Amelia parked outside the Registry of Deeds. Inside, the building smelled like time. Paper, ink, dust that had settled into the corners of history. They sat at a small table near the back, away from the main counter. Amelia set the box down gently. Harper stared at it. "I feel stupid," Harper admitted, her voice thin. "For agreeing. For letting them—" Amelia cut her off. "You are not stupid," she said. "You were outnumbered and you were being provoked. There's a difference." Harper swallowed. "Then why are we here?" Amelia slid a clipboard toward Harper. At the top was a form. Deed recording request. Harper's mouth went dry. Amelia tapped the paper once. "Before we do this," she said, "you need to see what's inside." Harper's hands hovered over the yellowed tape. She hesitated, because opening it meant something. It meant the humiliation wasn't just a moment, it was a story. And Harper was tired of stories where she lost. Amelia's voice softened slightly. "Harper," she said, "whatever is in that box, it exists whether you look at it or not. The only question is whether you'll claim it." Harper took a breath. Then she peeled the tape back. The sound was loud in the quiet room, a tearing, sticky rip that felt like skin pulled away from a wound. The flaps opened. Harper expected trash, old letters, random keepsakes, something sentimental meant to mock her. Instead, she saw folders, neatly stacked, labeled in black ink. Wharf Lot 12, Assault Line Road parcels, Cross Harbor leases, Caldwell Trust documents. Harper's heart stuttered. Amelia leaned forward, eyes narrowing. She lifted the top folder and opened it. Inside were documents, formal, stamped, signed. A deed, a legal description of land, a map. Harper didn't understand the details, but she understood the words she did recognize. Grantor, Margaret Elaine Caldwell. Grantee, Harper Elise Lane. Harper's breath left her body in a rush. "What?" Harper whispered. Amelia flipped through, fast and precise. Her expression changed, the way a person's face changes when they see a door they didn't know existed. "This is substantial," Amelia murmured. Harper's hands trembled as she lifted another folder. More deeds, more parcels, some small, some large, some with notes in Margaret's handwriting, clipped to the top like quiet instructions. Recorded after filing. Do not alert Ethan. Harper must sign request form. If contested, use affidavit in envelope. Harper looked up at Amelia, eyes wide. "Is this real?" she whispered. Amelia met her gaze. "Yes," she said, "this is very real." Harper's chest tightened, torn between disbelief and something like grief. "Why would she—" Harper began. Amelia lifted a sealed envelope from the bottom of the box. It was addressed in careful handwriting, Harper Lane. Amelia didn't open it. She handed it to Harper like it was sacred. Harper's fingers shook as she slid a nail under the seal. The paper tore with a soft sigh. Inside was a letter, handwritten, firm, controlled. Harper unfolded it and began to read. Margaret's voice came alive in ink, not warm, not gentle, but unmistakably human. "Harper, you were brought into this family as decoration. Ethan wanted a woman who would admire him without challenging him. I have watched you be diminished, first in jokes, then in public, then in your own voice. I have also watched you work, quietly, without applause. The way women survive when men believe survival belongs to them. The Caldwell name is built on land, not on love, not on loyalty. Land does not care who deserves it. It only belongs to whoever is clever enough to keep it. Ethan thinks he is clever. He is not. You did not come for this family's power. That is why you can be trusted with it. Enclosed are deeds and transfer documents for properties I hold personally, not through the company. They are yours if you choose to claim them. Your lawyer will know the process. Ethan will laugh. Let him. A man who laughs at paper has never learned what paper can do. Use this not for revenge, but for independence. If you become cruel, you will only become a different version of Ethan. Do not contact me about this. Do not thank me. Build something that feeds you. Margaret Caldwell Harper stared at the letter, her vision blurring. Not because it was sentimental, because it was the first time someone in that world had spoken to her like she mattered. Not as a wife, not as a prop, but as a person with agency. Harper's throat tightened. She knew, Harper whispered. Amelia nodded. She knew. Harper's mind raced. But why humiliate me in court? Harper asked, voice cracking. Why make me hold that box like I was nothing? Amelia's eyes sharpened. Because, Amelia said quietly, humiliation was the camouflage. Harper blinked. Amelia leaned closer. If Margaret had openly given you property in court, Ethan would have contested it immediately. He would have moved assets, pressured her, delayed the recording. He would have turned it into a battlefield. Harper swallowed. But a box, Amelia continued. A box he laughs at, that he waves through without scrutiny? Harper's breath caught. He dismissed it, Harper whispered. Amelia's mouth curved slightly. He did, Amelia said, and that dismissal might be the biggest mistake he's ever made. Harper looked down at the deeds again. Some parcels were near the harbor, near the redevelopment zone, near that shiny billboard. Caldwell Redevelopment. A new gray bridge is coming. Harper's heart pounded. Is this the land under his project? She asked, barely audible. Amelia flipped to a map, tracing with her finger. Yes, Amelia said. Not all of it, but enough. Harper felt dizzy. What happens if I record these? She whispered. Amelia's voice was calm, but there was steel underneath. Then you become the owner of critical parcels, Amelia said, which means any project that requires that land requires you. Harper stared at the form again, the blank spaces waiting. She thought of Ethan laughing, thought of Sienna's smirk, thought of the word cute thrown like a leash. Her hand hovered above the pen, and suddenly she realized something frightening. Power wasn't a feeling. It was paperwork. Amelia tapped the form. This is the part Margaret couldn't do for you, Amelia said. You have to claim it. Harper took a breath. Her hand trembled. I'm scared, she admitted. Amelia nodded once. Good. That means you understand it matters. Harper looked down at the box, at the crushed corner, the old tape, the smell of dust and salt. Trash to them, a key to her. She picked up the pen and began to write her name. The first thing Harper noticed after the documents were recorded was the sound. Not the sound of her own breathing or her mother's worried footsteps, the sound of a stamp. A clerk pressed a seal into the paper with a firm motion. Thump. The sound vibrated through the table into Harper's bones. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cinematic, and yet it felt like the first real door closing behind her, locking out the version of herself who accepted scraps. Amelia watched the clerk file the documents. Then she turned to Harper. Now, Amelia said, we wait for the noise. Harper frowned. Noise? Amelia's eyes held hers. Men like Ethan, Amelia said, don't handle surprises quietly. They didn't have to wait long. By that afternoon, Amelia's phone was ringing non-stop. Calls from unknown numbers, voicemails left with clipped threats disguised as polite concern. Harper's phone buzzed too. Ethan. Harper stared at his name until her thumb went numb. Amelia shook her head. Don't answer, she said. Harper swallowed. But Amelia's voice was firm. Let him speak through lawyers now. The second call came from Ethan's attorney. Amelia answered, listened, and her expression didn't change. When she hung up, Harper asked, What did they say? Amelia's mouth tightened slightly. "They said," Amelia replied, "there must be a misunderstanding." Harper's laugh came out sharp and humorless. Amelia continued, "They also said they will contest the transfers." Harper's stomach dropped. "Can they?" she asked, voice small again. Amelia looked at Harper. "Anyone can contest anything," Amelia said. "The question is whether they can win." Harper's hands trembled. "And can they?" Amelia's voice was measured. "Margaret executed these properly," she said. "Not through the Caldwell corporate entity, through her personal holdings. There are notarizations, witnesses, dates." Harper swallowed. "But Ethan will try," Amelia said, "because he can't accept that he miscalculated." Harper looked out the window at Graybridge Harbor, gray waves slapping the docks. "I don't want a war," Harper whispered. Amelia's gaze softened just a fraction. "Then end it clean," she said. "Let the court see the truth." The next hearing was scheduled quickly. Ethan's team pushed for urgency, likely hoping to overwhelm Harper again. Harper walked into the courthouse a week later with a different posture, not confident, but anchored. The cardboard box sat in Amelia's office now, empty except for Margaret's letter. Harper didn't bring it. She didn't need the prop anymore. Ethan arrived looking irritated rather than amused. His suit was impeccable, but his jaw was tight. Sienna was with him again, though she stood slightly farther back, as if she'd sensed the atmosphere changing. Margaret Caldwell was there too. This time she did not sit behind Ethan. She sat alone, one row back, centered, like an island. Ethan glanced at her and frowned. "Mother," he murmured as he passed, voice low. "Why are you—" Margaret didn't respond. Ethan's eyes flashed. Judge Rowan Pierce entered, and the room rose. The proceedings began. Ethan's attorney stood first. "Your Honor," he said smoothly, "we have discovered an irregularity in the alleged transfers of property to Ms. Lane. We believe Ms. Lane, under undue influence, may have—" Amelia stood before the attorney finished. "Objection," Amelia said, voice crisp. "Speculation." Judge Pierce's gaze sharpened. "Sustained. Counsel, state facts." Ethan's attorney recovered quickly. "Facts," he said, "are that Ms. Lane is in possession of recorded deeds—" "Deeds executed by Mrs. Margaret Caldwell," Amelia interrupted, placing a folder on the table. "Properly notarized, properly witnessed, properly recorded." Ethan's attorney's smile tightened. "We question," he said carefully, "whether Mrs. Caldwell was of sound mind." That did it. Margaret Caldwell's head lifted slightly, the first visible reaction she'd shown. Judge Pierce's eyes flicked toward her. "Mrs. Caldwell," Judge Pierce said, "are you of sound mind?" Margaret's voice was calm. "Yes," she said, "more than anyone in this room." A few people shifted uncomfortably. Ethan's face flushed. His attorney tried again, pivoting. "Your Honor, these transfers, if upheld, cause significant harm to the Caldwell redevelopment project, which is a cornerstone of Graybridge's economic—" Judge Pierce held up a hand. "This court is not responsible for Mr. Caldwell's business choices," the judge said. "We are responsible for determining lawful ownership." Amelia stepped forward slightly. "Your Honor," she said, "I would like to submit Exhibit A, the chain of title and the executed transfer documents." She handed documents to the clerk, who passed them to the judge. Judge Pierce reviewed them slowly, eyes moving over stamps, dates, signatures. The room was silent except for the soft rustle of paper. Harper's heart pounded. This was the moment where the world either shifted or snapped back. Judge Pierce looked up. "Mr. Caldwell," the judge said, turning toward Ethan, "do you have any legal claim to these properties?" Ethan opened his mouth. He looked at his attorney. His attorney spoke for him. "These properties were understood to be part of the Caldwell family holdings," the attorney said. "Mr. Caldwell has reasonable expectation." Judge Pierce's gaze hardened. "Expectation is not ownership," the judge said. He tapped the papers with his pen. "These deeds indicate Mrs. Caldwell held these properties personally," the judge said, "and she transferred them to Ms. Lane." Ethan leaned forward, voice sharp. "This is absurd," Ethan snapped. "She's doing this to punish me." Judge Pierce's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone," he said. Ethan's hands clenched. Amelia spoke calmly. "Your Honor," Amelia said, "I would also like to submit Exhibit B." She handed another envelope to the clerk. Judge Pierce opened it and pulled out a document, an affidavit. He read silently, then looked at Margaret. "Mrs. Caldwell," he said, "is this your affidavit?" Margaret's voice was steady. "Yes," she said. Judge Pierce's gaze returned to the affidavit. Harper couldn't see the words from where she stood, but she could see Ethan's face as his attorney leaned in to read over the judge's shoulder. The attorney's expression changed, slightly, but enough. Sienna noticed too. Her eyes widened just a fraction. Then she looked away quickly, like she didn't want to be seen reacting. Judge Pierce cleared his throat. "This affidavit states," he said slowly, "that Mrs. Caldwell executed these transfers knowingly and intentionally due to concerns regarding Mr. Caldwell's conduct and financial manipulations during the marriage." Ethan's face went pale. Harper's breath caught. Judge Pierce continued. "It also states," he said, voice tightening, "that Mr. Caldwell pressured Mrs. Lane to sign corporate documents without disclosure." Harper's stomach dropped. That was in writing, in Margaret's words. Ethan's attorney quickly stood. "Your Honor, we object to character—" Judge Pierce held up his hand again. "This is directly relevant," the judge said. "If Mr. Caldwell engaged in financial coercion, it affects this court's view of equitable division." Ethan's mouth opened. "No," he said, voice cracking with anger. "No, this is— Mother!" Margaret did not look at him. She looked at the judge, then at Harper for one quiet second. Harper's chest tightened. Margaret's expression didn't soften, but something passed between them, an acknowledgement, a line drawn. Ethan turned toward Sienna as if searching for something, support, reassurance. Sienna's face was tight, her eyes darting around the room. For the first time, she looked less like a queen and more like a woman realizing she had bet on the wrong horse. Judge Pierce set down the papers. "Mr. Caldwell," he said, voice firm, "this court will not invalidate properly executed property transfers because they inconvenience your business." Ethan's hands trembled with restrained fury. Judge Pierce continued. "Furthermore," he said, "given the evidence of financial coercion and concealment, the court will revisit the proposed settlement terms." Ethan's attorney whispered urgently to him. Ethan shook his head, jaw clenched. Harper stood still, feeling the room tilt. Not because she felt victorious, but because, for the first time, the world was not bending toward Ethan's will. Judge Pierce looked at Harper. "Ms. Lane," he said, "do you understand the implications of what you now own?" Harper swallowed. "I think," she said quietly, "I'm starting to." The judge nodded once. "Good," he said, "because with ownership comes responsibility." He paused, gaze sweeping the room. "And with arrogance comes consequences." The judge's ruling wasn't poetic, it was legal, but it felt like a crack of thunder. He upheld the validity of the transfers pending any further evidence and warned Ethan's counsel against frivolous challenges. He also ordered deeper financial disclosures, specifically focusing on the documents Harper had been pressured to sign. When the hearing ended, people rose, murmuring. Ethan stood frozen for a moment, then spun toward Margaret. "Why?" he hissed, voice low but shaking. Margaret faced him calmly. "Because you confused possession with entitlement," she said. Ethan's eyes flashed. "She's nothing," he snapped. Margaret's voice cut through like ice. "She is more than you," Margaret said. "Because she knows how to live without worship." Ethan's face twisted. Sienna stepped back as if she didn't want to be touched by his anger. Ethan turned toward Harper, eyes burning. "You think you won?" he spat. Harper met his gaze. Her voice came out quiet, almost sad. This was never about winning, she said. It was about leaving. Ethan stared at her like he didn't know how to respond to someone who refused to play his game. Then he laughed, once, harsh. "You won't keep it," he said. "I'll take it back." Harper didn't answer, because she didn't need to. Amelia stepped beside Harper, calm. "Contact us through counsel," Amelia said, and guided Harper toward the exit. As Harper walked down the courthouse steps, the rain had eased into mist. Graybridge Harbor lay in the distance like a promise and a threat. Harper's mother waited near the car, eyes anxious. Lillian searched Harper's face. Harper exhaled slowly. "It's real," Harper said. Lillian's hand flew to her mouth. Harper nodded, and for the first time, Lillian smiled, not with joy, but with relief. Because a mother knows when her child has finally stopped drowning. Over the next weeks, Ethan's noise grew louder. Articles surfaced about Caldwell redevelopment delays. Investors got nervous. Meetings were canceled. Ethan's calls went unanswered. He tried charm, then threats, then charm again. Sienna began appearing less, then not at all. Harper heard through Graybridge whispers that Sienna had taken meetings elsewhere. New men, new opportunities, a new ladder. Because Sienna didn't love Ethan, Sienna loved proximity to power, and power had shifted. Ethan's company scrambled. They tried to negotiate with Harper quietly, hoping to keep it out of the public eye. Amelia handled those calls. Harper stayed home, baking, rebuilding her mind. One evening, a letter arrived at Harper's mother's house. No return address. Harper opened it carefully. Inside was a single sentence in Margaret's handwriting. "Do not sell out of fear." Harper stared at it for a long time. Then she folded it and placed it in the recipe notebook. Because she understood now, Margaret's gift wasn't just land, it was instruction. And Harper was finally ready to decide what kind of woman she would become with this new power. Not a cruel one, not a frightened one, a free one. People like to imagine revenge as fire. A woman walks into a room, destroys a man, and walks out in slow motion while music plays. But real revenge, the kind that lasts, is quieter. It's a woman choosing not to hand her life back to the people who tried to shrink it. Harper didn't show up at Ethan's office to gloat. She didn't call Sienna to humiliate her. She didn't buy a new car just to be seen. Instead, Harper sat at the kitchen table with Amelia and maps spread out like a new language. "These parcels," Amelia explained, tracing lines, "connect to the waterfront access." Harper leaned in, studying the shapes. "What does that mean?" she asked. Amelia's voice was practical. "It means," she said, "that if Ethan's project needs that access, he needs your permission, or he needs to redesign." Harper swallowed. "I don't want to ruin the town," Harper said quietly. "Graybridge needs jobs." Amelia nodded. "Then don't ruin it," she said. "Direct it." Harper looked at the map again, and for the first time, she saw Graybridge not as a place she was trapped in, but as a place she could shape. Harper's bakery dream returned slowly, like warmth coming back to hands. But this time, it wasn't a small booth at the market. This time, it was a space, a building, a plan. Harper used one of the smaller parcels Margaret had transferred, an old storefront near the harbor that had been sitting empty for years. People told Harper it was foolish, too risky, too expensive. Harper smiled politely and kept going. Because she'd already lived the risk of staying with a man who didn't respect her, and compared to that, paperwork was easy. The storefront became Lane and Salt, a bakery with warm light spilling onto the wet sidewalk in the mornings, a place that smelled like cinnamon and brown butter and second chances. Harper hired local workers, women who'd been pushed aside, men who'd been laid off when the warehouses changed hands, teenagers saving for school. She paid fairly. She taught them recipes, but more importantly, she taught them what it felt like to be trusted. People came not just for pastries, they came because the place felt like relief. Meanwhile, Ethan's project stalled, not entirely because of Harper, because of Ethan. Because once investors smelled weakness, they backed away. Once newspapers hinted at scandal, they demanded answers. Once the town council learned about the ownership disputes, they delayed approvals. Ethan tried to frame Harper as greedy, but Graybridge remembered Harper's booth at the market. They remembered her mother. They remembered kindness. Ethan's narrative didn't stick. One afternoon, Ethan showed up at Lane & Salt. Harper was behind the counter, hands dusted with flour. The bell above the door rang. Harper looked up and saw him. He looked smaller, not physically, but in his eyes. There was exhaustion, disbelief, anger that had nowhere to land. Harper's heart tightened, not with love, but with the ghost of what love used to be. Ethan approached the counter. People in line glanced at him, recognized him, and suddenly the bakery felt very quiet. Harper wiped her hands slowly on her apron. "What do you want?" she asked calmly. Ethan's jaw clenched. "Talk," he said. Harper nodded toward the small table near the window. They sat. Outside, the harbor mist drifted in thin sheets, the world blurred beyond glass. Ethan stared at Harper like he couldn't reconcile this woman, steady, composed, with the woman he had laughed at in court. "You planned this," he said finally. Harper's gaze was steady. "No," she said. "You planned my humiliation. I survived it." Ethan's nostrils flared. "My mother," he said bitterly. "She betrayed me." Harper's eyes narrowed slightly. "She didn't betray you," Harper said. "She judged you." Ethan's laugh was sharp. "And you think you're better than me now?" Harper took a breath. "I don't think about being better," she said. "I think about being free." Ethan leaned forward, voice low. "Give it back," he said. Harper didn't flinch. "No," she said. Ethan's eyes flashed. "You don't even know what you're doing," he snapped. Harper's voice stayed calm. "I know exactly what I'm doing," she said. "I'm building something that doesn't require me to disappear." Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. His gaze moved around the bakery, the people working, the warm light, the steady hum of purpose. He looked like a man staring at a life he didn't know how to control. "You're petty," he said, but the words sounded weak. Harper's eyes softened, not with pity, but with clarity. "I'm not petty," she said. "I'm done being convenient." Ethan sat back, breathing hard. For a moment, Harper thought he might apologize, but Ethan didn't know how. He only knew how to negotiate and threaten. Finally, he stood abruptly. "This isn't over," he said. Harper's voice was quiet, final. "It is for me," she said. Ethan stared at her, then turned and walked out. The bell rang above the door again, a small, ordinary sound, and the bakery breathed back to life. That night, Harper received a call from Amelia. "It's settling," Amelia said. "Ethan's counsel wants to finalize the divorce terms, quietly." Harper exhaled. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means," Amelia said, "he's realizing he can't take what's already recorded, and he doesn't want the deeper financial investigation to continue." Harper's stomach tightened. "So he'll walk away?" Harper asked. Amelia's voice was careful. "He'll walk away," she said, "if you agree to certain boundaries and a clean end." Harper looked around her mother's kitchen, warm and small, the recipe notebook on the counter. She thought of the night she left the Caldwell house. She thought of the court laughter. She thought of the stamp at the registry. Harper's voice was steady. "Let's end it," she said. The final court appearance was quieter, less spectacle, more procedure. Ethan didn't bring Sienna. Margaret attended but said nothing. Judge Pierce finalized the divorce, approved the updated settlement, and documented the property transfers as separate from marital division since they were gifts executed properly. Ethan kept his pride, what was left of it. Harper kept her freedom and the land. When it was over, Harper walked out of the courthouse and didn't look back. Outside, the sea air hit her face, cold and clean. Amelia stood beside her. "You okay?" Amelia asked. Harper nodded slowly. "I feel empty," Harper admitted, "but not in a bad way." Amelia's mouth curved. "That's space," Amelia said. "Space you didn't have before." A week later, Harper received a message from Margaret. Not a letter this time, a request. Margaret wanted to meet. Harper hesitated, then agreed. They met at a quiet bench overlooking the harbor, the kind of place where you could watch ships come and go like thoughts you no longer needed. Margaret arrived precisely on time, wearing a dark coat, hands gloved, posture perfect. Harper stood. Margaret gestured lightly. "Sit," she said. They sat. For a moment they watched the water. Then Margaret spoke. "You opened it," Margaret said. Harper nodded. "Yes." Margaret's gaze stayed on the horizon. "Good," she said. Harper's throat tightened. "Why did you do it?" Harper asked. "Why me?" Margaret's jaw tightened slightly, as if the question irritated her. "Because," Margaret said, "Ethan thinks love is a weakness, and he uses it to control." Harper swallowed. Margaret continued, "I have spent my life watching men mistake charm for character." Harper stared at her. Margaret's eyes flicked toward Harper briefly. "I also watched you," Margaret said. "You were humiliated and you did not become cruel. That matters." Harper's voice was quiet. "You humiliated me too." Margaret didn't deny it. "Yes," she said, "and I regret it, only in the sense that it was necessary." Harper's chest tightened with conflicting feelings. Margaret's voice lowered. "Ethan would have fought me," she said. "He would have delayed. He would have taken it into the company and buried it. He would have turned it into a siege." Harper's hands clenched. "So you made him laugh," Harper whispered. Margaret's eyes narrowed slightly, like approval. "I made him arrogant," Margaret said. "Arrogance is the easiest blindfold." Harper looked down at her hands. Margaret's voice softened by a millimeter. "I am not asking for forgiveness," Margaret said. "I am asking you not to waste this." Harper lifted her gaze. "I won't," she said. Margaret nodded once. Then she said something Harper would remember for the rest of her life. "Do not let anyone make you grateful for crumbs." Harper's throat tightened. Margaret stood. "One more thing," Margaret said. Harper looked up. Margaret's gaze held Harper's with unexpected directness. "Build something that outlives them," Margaret said. Then she turned and walked away, coat moving like a shadow against the gray sky. Harper stayed on the bench, staring at the water. She realized something then, something tender and strange. Margaret had been a Harper once. Maybe not with flour and a market booth, but with a smaller voice than she deserved. Maybe she'd survived by becoming hard. Maybe she wanted Harper to survive without losing softness. Weeks turned into months. Lane and Salt became a fixture. People brought their kids. People brought their grief. People brought their stories. Harper listened while kneading dough, while pouring coffee, while wiping counters. She learned that Graybridge was full of women who had been laughed at, full of men who had been taught laughter was power. Harper didn't preach. She just kept the lights warm and the prices fair and the door open. Sometimes, late at night, Harper would take out the cardboard box from her office shelf. It was still the same, crushed corner, old tape peeled back. Inside, she kept Margaret's letter and the first stamped copies of the deeds. Not because she needed to look at them, but because she needed to remember. Freedom can come in ugly packaging, and people will hand you your power in a way that makes them feel safe, if they're arrogant enough. Harper would breathe in the scent of paper and salt and dust. Then she'd close the box, not hiding it, honoring it, because it was the moment her life split into before and after. And one evening, as the bakery closed and the last customer left with a warm bag in their hands, Harper turned off the lights and stood for a moment in the dim quiet. She thought of Ethan's laughter in court, how it had echoed like a verdict. She thought of the stamp at the registry, thump, like a heartbeat of a new life. She thought of her mother's arms around her. She thought of Margaret's harsh kind of guidance. And she realized something simple. She had not been saved. She had claimed herself. Harper locked the door, pulled her coat tighter against the sea air, and stepped into the mist. Graybridge glittered faintly in the distance, harbor lights trembling like scattered coins. Harper walked toward home, toward warmth, toward a future that belonged to her. And if this story touched something in you, if you've ever been laughed at, dismissed, or handed crumbs and told to be grateful, leave a comment, not for the algorithm, for the person out there who needs to know they're not alone. Because sometimes the only difference between a woman who loses everything and a woman who takes her life back is one decision, one signature, one old cardboard box that everyone else was too arrogant to open.